U.S. President Donald Trump is ending his administration's immigration crackdown in Minnesota. The operation has led to mass detentions and 2 protesters being killed. At its peak, around 3,000 agents were deployed to the state, outnumbering its police force. The withdrawal comes as polling shows an increasing number of Americans disapprove of Trump's hardline immigration policies.
A makeshift memorial in Minneapolis for Renee Good, one of 2 protesters killed by federal agents in January. Residents feel relieved thousands of agents are now supposed to leave their city, but grief and anger still echo.
It's hard to talk about silver linings, but I think, one amazing thing that came out of this was just how strong our community can be here, and the level of organization that we were able to achieve was really incredible. And I hope that doesn't end with this surge. I hope it can be an inspiration for other communities in the country as well.
Protesters here outside a federal detention center respond with skepticism.
We don't believe it. We're going to be out here until they prove it, until they stop running this Gestapo SUV, running through our streets, snatching up our neighbors, murdering our neighbors. Until that ends, we don't believe it.
We don't trust them. Why should we trust somebody that lies?
And local politicians also have their doubts.
We're going to believe it when we see it. And where are they going to go? They're going to go to different cities, and they're going to do the same unconstitutional tactics that they did in Minneapolis. So we're not going to end until this whole system is done for.
Trump's border czar Tom Homan hinted at new missions in his announcement.
And to deliver on President Trump's promise for strong border security and mass deportation, law enforcement officers drawn down from this surge operation will either return to their duty stations or be assigned elsewhere to achieve just that.
Officials say more than 4,000 people were arrested during the weeks-long operation in Minnesota, allegedly illegal immigrants. But the aggressive tactics sparked outrage in Democrat-run Minneapolis, which usually takes a softer approach to immigration. While the heavily armed agents sent by Trump are now preparing to leave, fears are growing that scenes like these could soon happen again in another U.S. city.
Let's bring in Claire Finkelstein. She is the faculty director of the Center for Ethics and the Rule of Law at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So we just heard from Tom Homan there, and we've also seen the Trump administration's commitment to its deployment in Minneapolis waver in recent weeks. So the question is, why do you think they're ending the surge now?
Well, the timing is very suspicious, given that there's a funding bill that's going to be voted on tomorrow. In fact, it's already been voted down in the Senate. So it seems all but certain that this bill is going to fail. But there were these desperate attempts by the administration possibly to save that funding package. Now, that's not going to make much of a difference to ICE and the Customs and Border Patrol functioning in the U.S. because they already were operating with a budget of $75 billion. So, in fact, there's not going to be a lot of cutback on their operations from a practical sense, but it was something they were trying to achieve. I think the other answer to your question is that the protests in Minneapolis have been very effective. And it's very clear to this administration that their ICE enforcement measures are extremely unpopular with Americans.
Now, that being said, the immigration crackdown is, of course, still a flashpoint issue on both sides of the political aisle. And is there any reason to think, after this announcement, that we could see a change in Washington's thinking?
It's very unclear. There were Senate committee hearings today in which Homeland Security officials were defending the policies, and there wasn't a lot of traction. There was some small amount of movement. And what we did see was the Republican chair of the committee, Rand Paul, was really pressing these Homeland Security officials in a way that shows some bipartisan movement and some suggestion that Republicans are backing off defending the administration, and some admission on the officials' part that excessive force may have been used.
Now, you mentioned those Senate hearings today, and a question that has been on my mind is that we have seen more pressure from Republicans and Homeland Security doubling down on some of their procedures. Have we seen any admitting that they have done any wrong in an operation that cost 2 Americans their lives?
There was some suggestion, though they were very reluctant to admit it, that they needed to look at some of the training. There was some video shown that showed ICE tactics using very extreme measures. And there was very close questioning of the officials. Is this consistent with their training? Which was an excellent question to ask. And they had to admit, no, it was not. There are ongoing investigations by the federal government into the circumstances of the killing of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, the 2 Americans who were killed by ICE agents. There was a lot of pressuring of the officials as to whether or not those investigations are going to be fair and even-handed and thorough. And there's a lot of questions around that. But I think slowly there's a recognition that ICE needs to change its approach and, at the very least, its training.
Now, is there any indication how those investigations into the killing of Renee Good and Alex Preddy will occur? Will that be an internal ICE investigation, or will there be some type of congressional oversight when it comes into looking into those killings?
Yeah, that's a great question. These are right now FBI investigations from what we understand. And one of the biggest problems with them is that the state of Minnesota has been excluded. And normally an investigation like this would be a combined local and federal investigation. But the state of Minnesota has been excluded from accessing the crime scenes, excluded from examining the evidence which was removed from the scenes by the federal government. And so that's one of the reasons there's a lot of concern, in addition to which you had Kristi Noem announcing that the 2 victims of the shooting were actually domestic terrorists, prejudging the investigations and suggesting that there would be a bias going into them. And that's a real problem, and also a message that Stephen Miller echoed.
All right, so many open questions, even though we can say today that ICE is being pulled out of Minnesota. That was Claire Finkelstein from the University of Pennsylvania Law School. Thank you very much for joining us.